Hello, gorgeous manifestors. How are you? Happy Monday. I hope you are all really well. And I have been inspired by my gorgeous higher self, Sarah, to come on today and to talk about the power of contrast. So contrast is a term that many of you will have heard myself talk about before. You would have heard Esther Hicks use the word contrast before. It's generally a big word on the manifesting and LOA front. And it's something that a lot of us fear. And a lot of us want to kind of sidestep and avoid. And one of the things I've really learned throughout my manifesting journey, especially over the last year, going through the Believe releasing process and effectively going through an awakening, contrast is freaking powerful in terms of what it can do for your manifesting. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. So many of you would have heard me say that it is the contrast that causes us to create new desires. So we aren't designed to just sit here and stay static. We are here in physical form to expand and keep evolving and moving forward. And as we expand, our higher selves expand, the universe expands, and the multiverse expands. And so we are designed to expand, which means we aren't very good at staying still and staying static. And a classic example of this was when I was stuck in PR and I was too scared to move, but I kept getting the nudge to move, and I left and then came back, and I did that about 3 times. And then eventually I got a massive sort of clout from the universe because something had to happen to make me move. And at the time, that was big contrast. Something happened at work that made me just think, oh my goodness, I can't do this for the next, 10, 20, 30 years of my life. I can't stay here. I need to move. And what that contrast did is it rocket fueled me away from that world and into this, that's where it led me. And I look back now and I know that without that contrast, I wouldn't have been rocket launched into doing what I am doing now. And so contrast is really powerful. And at the You Deserve Abundance event in London that I guest spoke at on Saturday, amazing speakers there. The event was hosted by Esther McCann, who is amazing. I love you, darling. There was a lot of talk about this, and I feel like this is something that needs to be demystified, because what I've really learned over the last year or year and a half or 2 years, well, just generally, basically, since living and breathing, manifesting and law of attraction, is that when we ask for something, often the contrast that comes is part of the unfolding of that manifestation. Okay. So, and sometimes when this contrast happens, people think they're doing something wrong. They've manifested the wrong thing, that their vibration is off, and they've caused something to happen that shouldn't have happened. But often that contrast is part of the unfolding. So when I knew I didn't want to be in PR, I personally needed that contrast to get me out of it, to actually get me to move, because I tried moving, but it kept coming back. So that contrast that followed, that got me to leave for good, needed to happen. Then I went into network marketing for about 1.5 years. And after about 1.5 years of that, again, contrast kicked in, because I was like, actually, this isn't moving for me. I left London to do what I'm passionate about. And so I had 5 weeks of contrast where I was thinking, oh my goodness, what is it I'm actually going to do? And then from that contrast, that's when I found the Dream Day Journal process that I teach to all of my clients, that so many of you use. And that's then when the clarity came to become a manifesting coach. So contrast is so powerful. And when many of you now are following the Believe releasing process, And, you know, when you're going through that process as well, contrast shows up so that you can release the fears that you once had and set yourself free. So again, another example of the power of contrast. So I guess what I'm being guided to say to you all today is, try not to hate the contrast. Can be easier said than done at times, but always know that there is expansion behind it that is for your ultimate good. And I had some contrast last week, and the guidance was, you know, this, you know that this is for your expansion and the ultimate good. And this all links back in to knowing that you can't get it wrong, and in fact you can't do anything wrong. These things that we deem as wrong are often things that are put into our experience to help us to learn and grow and kind of catapult forward in a way that we wouldn't if we didn't have those times. And I talk about this in my books. For those of you, I mean, all of you pretty much will know about my books now. Welcome to the Beginning of Everything That You Want, and It's Time to Get Your Money Flow On. In both of my books, I talk about how contrast is a part of being physical. Okay, so you can't avoid it, but you can work to remove the fear around it. And again, the releasing process taught by Fifth Dimension Earth really helps to tackle that. But one thing I wanted to share, and some of you may have heard these stats before, is that if you are in contrast 49% of the time, but high vibrational 51% of the time, you're still going to be manifesting way more of the things that you want. Okay, if you are in high vibration 60% of the time and low vibration and contrast 40% of the time, you're still going to be manifesting, you know, at a quick pace. And if you are high vibrational 75% of the time, but in contrast and low vibration 25% of the time, so still 1 day out of 4, you're going to be manifesting rapidly. So that should give you some reassurance. And I think so often when I'm coaching people, obviously I coach them tools to help them to fast track their vibration so that their manifesting momentum like picks up pace really quickly. But sometimes there can be that misunderstanding that they need to stay there, and if they lose that high vibration, that they're messing up their manifesting flow. And I've done lives on this before, you know, talking about how being in contrast doesn't mess up your flow. It's a part of it. And so often the contrast that comes is a part of the unfolding. So try and allow it and recognize it for what it is, which again can be easier said than done. And often when we're going through these times, we're like, why is this happening? We don't understand. And a really gorgeous friend of mine always says, you can't join the dots up looking forward, you can only join them up looking back. And when you move through these phases of contrast and then look back, you're like, oh my goodness, because of that I'm now doing this, or this happened, or I couldn't have got here without that. Okay, so recognize the power and in fact the wonder of contrast, because it is really here to help you become a power creator, to rocket fuel you forwards. And as I said at the beginning of this live, we're not really here to be static and sat still. And in fact, that's why we get restless and bored. If we're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, we kind of get unfulfilled and kind of get a bit bored and restless. And even in Mastering the Art of Manifesting, I've been doing this for coming up to 3 years, but it's always evolving. Think of the new leading edge insight that's going to be brought through to you guys this year, because I've been evolving and moving through the releasing process. So we're always moving, and allow the contrast to just move too, and you will move through it, and you will be able to look back and think, oh my goodness, because of that contrast, this has happened, or this has manifested. And often the contrast is following a request that you have made. Okay, like a really lovely example would be someone that came to Limitless in London. They were trying to manifest a luxury room in the hotel that they were staying in. And on the first night in the hotel, they were in a normal room, but I think there was a mouse or something running across the hotel room floor. And so they're like, oh my God, this is horrible. So they had a really not great night's sleep the night before the event, but then the next morning they were upgraded and refunded the money back from that stay and given vouchers to come back and have another stay in the penthouse suite or something. So again, that's just a nice example of how the contrast can be part of the unfolding. So really and truly try and get your energy around the fact and your head around the fact that contrast is really powerful for our manifesting. Yes, it may not always feel great when you're in it. And yes, there's lots of tools to help you come back and feel good. You know, I talk about those in my books and on these lives, but try not to fight the contrast. Understand there's always love behind it and it's always there for your expansion and ultimate good. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And I really hope that resonates with you and just helps those of you that are going through contrast at the minute. I've just been through some again the last few days myself, and it's been pretty hardcore, but oh my goodness, now I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. That has expanded me now, and I can really feel into that and know the truth of that. Okay, my darlings. So I love you so, so, so much. Feel into the power of the contrast. Know that you are so, so, so loved, and I will be back on again live very, very soon. Mwah.